Did you know that people lived longer before the flood than after? This scene from God's good story is found in Genesis chapter 5. Now, chapters like this one get overlooked because their content isn't as emotionally stirring as a typical story, but I want to point out a few things before we just skip on to the next chapter. But before we do that, for all the women out there, let me make a quick side note and say that timelines in the Bible often just trace the men. This isn't because God doesn't value women, but because many of the books of the Bible were also used as historical records for the nation. And that's the system that they chose to use. Now, one family tree that doesn't follow this rule is Jesus' family tree found in Matthew chapter 1. In that list, God points out several women who had an irreplaceable role to play in Jesus' family tree. Now, let's get back to Genesis chapter 5. First, I want to look at the ages of men from Adam to Noah. Adam lived 130 years before he had his son Seth, and then another 800 years, 930 total years, and he isn't even the oldest one. Now, how can this be? The oldest verifiable person has only lived 122 years. Now, part of the answer is to skip ahead to the story of the flood, where the Bible says that all the sources of the vast watery depths burst open, and the floodgates of the sky were opened. And that's found in Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. So before the flood happened, there was this canopy of water. Think of like a greenhouse surrounding the earth. This would have created a global tropical atmosphere on a planet before people had the opportunity to mess it up. This isn't just a biblical concept. There's a lot of evidence around the globe for tropical plants in Russia and water erosion in deserts. It's very possible that this climate would have created the best possible environment for humans to exist for long periods of time. Now, second, don't miss the details in the timeline. Imagine that you got into an issue and the cops had to come ask you questions. Now, if you were lying, you would be as vague as possible, leaving out details, other people, and exact times. But if you were telling the truth, you wouldn't hesitate to throw in details that the cops could easily verify. This is essentially what God is doing with the list. He wrote a bunch of details down so the Israelites could have investigated and know that they were accurate. He wrote details to bring credibility to his good story. Go read this part of the story for yourself in Genesis chapter 5.